Thank you, and yes, it was, those were two quite long papers, but very interesting, so I think that we have quite a lot of questions. So if you have some, yes.
I was very interested in your galeb paper. I really enjoyed it. It was so much fun. The work I've done on masculinity was focused on the national masculinity. You know, the Serbian man is like this, and the German woman is like that. And so in some ways, what you're talking about is familiar to me with some of the own research I did. But I was struck by the total absence of any national masculinities in your talk. You talk about the Mediterranean masculinity, and then you have this wonderful quotation from someone says, you know, we do it for the honor of our town, but not for Dalmatia, not for Croatia, not for Yugoslavia. Is that because you haven't been pursuing that line of reasoning, or is it just not there, or do you have any comment on that?
Shall we collect or?
I think that you can.
Okay. So it's both, I would say. I was in Prague last year, and there I talked actually about the creating of regional masculinity, Dalmatian masculinity, between actually socialist ideals and Mediterranean. So like I'm trying, so I didn't put it here, but there is always this idea of what is it to be a Yugoslav man. Then, of course, what does it mean to be Croatian man? Because Dalmatia is part of Croatia. And then, of course, like Dalmatian man. So I'm kind of looking at like these three levels in general of like how galebovi are constructed. And then, of course, ideology, which I think in my case, socialism is maybe much more important than Yugoslavia. I don't know. But yeah, in this paper it was omitted because I was trying to do something else. But I am thinking about these like three levels, let's say.
If I may just add, it's also a bit of local patriotism. It's not even meant to be of hometown, but of his own contrada. So the quarter of the time. It's very Mediterranean.
Yeah. I mean, there, for instance, I have like few examples when like local galebovi are complaining, especially in 70s, that lots of all these men from the inland, like from Serbia or Bosnia, come in the summer to Adriatic for their own holidays, but then they pretend they're locals and try to be galebovi as well. But they can't do it because they don't have this inner, like, you know, like this is what they say, they're too crude, so they're too Balkan. Like they don't say it that way, but this is what they want to say. They're too Balkan, they're too crude, they don't have like this knowledge that we know how to romance a woman. So there is this kind of a...
Can we comment both papers?
Yes, sure.
Well, I will not neglect Vojtěchovský, but still this paper was rather interesting. And when you are speaking about ideology, and I was wondering, is it by pure chance that Tito named his personal yacht galeb?
I think so. First there was Tito's boat, then there were other galebovi.
Well, I'm not as old as Božo Čanić, so I won't go to identify myself with that figure. But I remember some jokes. You were asking jokes about this. One of these jokes was an Italian woman, tourist, and a Dalmatian guy who does not understand very well Italian, which is rare, by the way, in Dalmatia. But, well, this was a joke. And they are walking on the shore, and one of the sudden, he grasps her and throws her into the water. What actually happened? She asked, "Bacia mi amore," and he understood, "Baci me amore." And by the way, probably Slovenians can remember a very popular song at that time, which was it was like that. Excuse me, my voice. Non capito, jede jala in se zasmejala je. It was, the tune was more Dalmatian, but the words and the song was Slovenian. Well, okay, Vojtěchovský. Ondřej. Very interesting, yes. I would just say, I would like to focus more on Masarykovstvo, because as you correctly stressed, the first, not the first, because the first connections of Slovenians with Prague were there of Sigismund from Luxembourg and Barbara Celska, of course. The Slovenians should know it.
Přemysl Takar the second.
It's not the
Bohemian king and the ruler of Carinthia.
Anyway, this is not but in the 20th century, there are some very interesting persons from Slovenia who studied in Prague. For instance, in the field of music, Jan Koravnik, whom I happen to know personally, a composer and a teacher, he was a pupil of Alois Haba, who was, by the way, one who insisted on or discovered composition of quarter of tones, not dodecaphony, but even quarters of tone. Well, he did not, Jan Koravnik did not follow his teacher in this field, but still. Another one was Ferdo Delak, regisseur, who also from Gorica, who also studied in modernist theater between the wars in Prague. The Slovenians, Masarykovci, were known by the name of a newspaper, a review.
Review magazine.
A magazine known as Preporod. That's why they were called Preporodovci. There were not so few. This was, you could say, a movement of people who then fought for the unification of Yugoslav people. This was meant at that time. Another very important movement in Slovenia, which had its capital in Prague, were the Sokols. And by the way, even the Tiger movement in Moscow was in a way inspired by the Sokol movement in Slovenia and moreover in Prague. František Kaus, who in 1938 made an
assassination.
He tried to assassinate Mussolini during his visit in Kobarid. He did not succeed. He gave up the last moment. But he came just from the so-called international schod in Prague in August 1938. And the Tiger was maneuvered by the Ljubljana Center of the Military Intelligence of the the Royal Army, who was of Czech origin, Branko Plhak. And he was the man. He was even a friend of Danilo Zen, who was the guerrilla commander of the Tiger movement in Moscow.
Thank you. So, a few comments. I think that's any other questions? because, yes, Maya.
Okay, I have a question for both. I really enjoyed both papers. And first for Ondřej, perhaps. You mentioned that immediately after the war, those Yugoslav peoples who went to Prague for the exchange internship or whatever, they got these instructions, like, behave, this is an advanced country. So I was just wondering, like, if this image persisted further on, like in the following decades, like, was Czechoslovakia still perceived in Yugoslavia as an advanced country, or did this get lost, with Stalinism and everything, and then with the rise of Yugoslav self-management and, this, like, self-perception of being advanced in a way, at least socially advanced? And maybe, what was also the opposite perception, like how then Czechoslovaks perceived Yugoslavia in return, probably not as advanced country, at least like in immediate post-war, and how this changed, like with all things that happened later. So this is for Ondřej, and I have one for Anita as well. I was wondering about these gift-giving practices and this Mediterranean masculinities. I was just wondering, to what extent is this contradictory? Because, I mean, like this proper gentleman is supposed to give the gifts, not receive them. So it's like, I just don't get it in a way. Like, was it, I don't know how, like, you said like that you're wondering about it yourself anyway. So yeah, is it like, would it be, what would it give, to male self-perception, if he was receiving those gifts instead of giving them, as our culture is kind of teaching us from, like in this patriarchal environment and so on. So just if you can reflect on this. Thank you very much.
No, you go. It's okay. You can.
Okay, so thank you for the question, Maya. I think it's very interesting. So basically, and it would be a superficial that it changed somewhere around 1968. That Czechoslovakia was not considered anymore as a more advanced country, and which was connected to some self-perception of citizens of Yugoslavia as citizens of a country which is independent and which is very successful in the contrast to the Soviet bloc countries. And from the opposite side, so Yugoslavia was perceived from the Czech side always as a brotherly country which has very brave, heroic tradition, and for that was much beloved and celebrated. But of course, this Czech self-perception was that, okay, we are the most advanced Slavs and we should help our brothers in the south and to help them to be developed as well. But it's becoming changing in 1960s. So when, and especially with the development of the tourism, when the people came to the Adriatic, and of course they did not much travel to Kosovo or Macedonia, but they were mostly in Slovenia and these parts of Croatia. And they saw that Yugoslavia is much westernized and close to the Western Europe, and there is much of the goods which are not on in a Czechoslovak market. So from that point of view, there was a new type of admiration of Yugoslavia, not only as a brave and independent country, but also which is very successful in the economic sense and civilizational sense of word. Of course, when we were written with Jan Pelikan that book on Czechoslovak-Yugoslav relations in the 1970s and 1980s, and we went deeper in the discussions and in some reports and the different levels of the society, we saw that this image is much more complicated, and that even in Yugoslavia, in some circles, Czechoslovakia was still considered as a developed country, but which is politically not independent, and which could not practice its potential because of the political limits which are given to the Soviet bloc limits. So it was quite often what could be read in some materials and analysis on Czechoslovakia from the different level of the party state apparatuses, not only in the center of federation but also in republican, and from these discussions of from the opposite side, of course, this admiration for the Yugoslav success was very often present on the Czech side, but on the other hand, those who were more involved in the situation in Yugoslavia, so they said, okay, that's one side, but on the other side we have to consider so how dense is the net of the hospitals in some parts of Yugoslavia. So and this comparison, which mostly went to the advantage of Czechoslovakia, and especially what was the subject of comparison was the development of Slovakia and the development of some underdeveloped regions of Yugoslavia. So look, so our socialist system is able to develop a lot Slovakia and to the same level as the Czech lands, and on the other side the Yugoslav system is not possible to do that. So
before I answer your question, there is another connection between our topics, and these are like Czech women who are coming to the Adriatic and being extremely popular with the local galebs, especially in Makarska. But to answer your question, so basically there was a really, like, the biggest Czech summer resort was in next to Makarska, so there were like just like lots of Czech women. There is this part that like Czech women, because of the like lack of religion, let's say, and also like they were, these are the mythology, they were like the easiest one. I heard on that conference in Prague from a guy who is from Makarska that there were lots of course, marriages. Of course, after a while, that all the foreign women who married the local men in Makarska, they're all called Čechyně. They're all called Czech, even though they're not from like Czech Republic. They're just like the idea of being a Czech woman. So basically, all the foreign women that married into Makarska, they were all called in the end. Oh, this is Čechyně. So there is this idea. But to answer shortly your question, it seems contradictory, but like the basic idea is that the economic disparity, especially in the 60s, between the Mediterranean countries and Western and Northern European countries, these men were just poorer, and the availability of like these gifts they were getting, they were just like there, like jeans, in the early 60s were either expensive, really hard to get. So this is one part. So you get something that you don't have, and the other explanation that it's not mine. So I'm not really convinced so far by that. But for instance, in Greek case, there is one explanation that it's actually basically the fight between sexual and economic capital. So like there is this, not my quote, so-called hate fucking. So basically you like dislike these women because they're much richer. So you take revenge and you conquer them by actually your sexual advancement. And then they're so stupid that actually they send you gifts, and you in some way use them, and then you have like you're the winner in this story. So this is, for instance, one of the explanation, for instance, for Greece. I'm not so convinced, especially in Yugoslav case, but for instance, this is one of the explanations for Greece.
Sorry, can I just continue? I'll be short. So they send them gifts, or they
send them gifts, like they send them gifts, like they go back home to Germany or whatever, and that they send them gifts. They usually sometimes even invite them, to visit them, and then so they send them gifts,
They say what they want in advance.
I don't know.
So the question is also whether they revisited the next year, the next year.
I don't know how they knew the size, I don't know. This is just like,
So the last question is...
I understand that it's not your focus, but do you think also about the dark side of this story? So maybe using the records of police to try to investigate, are there any records of rape or other criminal acts?
This is definitely what I'm interested in. I tried to look at the court from Split archive, but I didn't find anything. I think I will find more because I will work on comparison now in Italy, Portugal, and Croatia. I know there was like this very big case in Italy about rape, so I will definitely try to find it. But there is also another thing, especially in the 80s, which is like sexually transmitted diseases and abortions. So like these are like also the part of actually like especially with the appearance of AIDS in the 80s, like there is a lots of actually question. There is a guy, maybe Damir knows him, who is doing a PhD about AIDS in Yugoslavia, and he basically found statistics that the biggest like percentage was amongst the homosexuals, men like sailors and galebovi. I mean, the men from Dalmatia. So there is like much bigger like percentage of sexual transmitted diseases in Dalmatia than the other parts of Yugoslavia. So I have 6 more years, so I tend actually to look, and especially in rape, because I think from what I've seen in Yugoslavia, it's really seen as the most benevolent in comparison with other countries. It's like really seen as like something extremely fun and romantic and nothing problematic. So I'm really curious, especially in the comparative perspective, what can I actually find out?
So yes, thank you. There is